It's never testing. All right, see what's going on right now and in real time, or after a game, or on your bullpen day or whatever. So I think a lot of people in the Padres organization were very curious about it and kind of intrigued because they saw like an old dude being able to pitch and stay healthy the whole season.
This is the More Than Velocity podcast. As always, we got Ryan Croton and myself, Jordan Oseguera. Bart's out with some sick kids today, but we have a special guest on today with Joe Beimel. I'm not even going to make the attempt to introduce him because his career was just a little better than mine. As everyone knows, I palled around in Mexico for plenty of years, but I'll go ahead and let Joe introduce himself and kind of let you know what an actual baseball career looks like. So, Joe, I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. As you said, my name's Joe Beimel. I played 13 years in the big leagues. I'm used to saying 20 years professionally, but I guess now last year I played, so that's 21. I got drafted in 96 by the Texas Rangers, didn't sign with them, went back to school, got drafted in 98 by the Pirates, signed with them, went through the minor leagues, made my big league debut in 2001 with the Pirates. And then, as most left-handed relievers go, every year was a different team. So I got released by the Pirates in 2004, and then just kind of went with a bunch of different teams. I was with the Rays. Well, they were the Devil Rays back then. That's how old I am. I was with the Twins. I was with the Dodgers, Nationals, Rockies, Mariners. Some stops in the minor leagues with the Royals, Braves, probably a few others in there, but ended up coming back this past year after being retired for, I guess it was 4 years. Yeah. So came back at 44 years old and played in AA and AAA with the Padres this past season.
Yeah, and I obviously want to get into that a little bit more, but before we do, in between those 4 years, you've been running your own facility. Do you mind talking about that a little bit?
Yeah, after I retired the first time in 2017, I played a few months in indie ball in the Atlantic League, and I was just like, all right, I don't like this. This isn't for me. I'm just going to take it to the house. And I was talking to a buddy of mine who would catch me in the off seasons. His name's Brent Dean, and he played at UCLA, played with the Brewers organization for a few years, and then he played indie ball as well for a few years. And, we had always talked about possibly doing something when we were both retired with training guys and getting into that space. And, I got done and I kind of sat on my couch for about 3 months. I was like, well, I can't do this the rest of my life. I've got to figure out something to do to keep me busy. One, my wife's going to kill me if I'm just sitting here all day. And two, I'm going to go nuts. So we ended up talking about it, and we were going to run a couple camps and clinics and stuff. And then an opportunity came up where there was a gym that was in a facility. They were leaving to go somewhere else, and that space had opened up. So we were like, well, let's go for it. Let's give it a shot right now. And we started Beimel Elite Athletics. We really got started right at the beginning of 2018. And, we wanted to kind of use our pro experience, use our baseball experience to help kids. I had played for so long, and I was always a guy who was always looking for different methods, different strength programs, different body alignment, recovery stuff, and was able to play till I was 40. And I figured, if I can help kids in high school or college or pro figure these things out earlier, they're going to have, a bigger advantage in their careers, whether, they just want to make the varsity team in high school, or, they want to go on to play pro ball or win a Cy Young, or, whatever their goals were. We wanted to help them with that. So we got that started, and, we opened in LA, the first one, had an opportunity a couple of years later to open one in El Paso, Texas. So we did that. So now we've got 2 running at this time.
Yeah. And go ahead, Ryan.
Yeah, I got a quick question because, Joe brings so much to the table. One of the things I'm curious about in your experience is like, how has baseball training, preparation for pitchers, and also sports science evolved for you? Like, I'm curious because, you've had such a long career, you've seen so many changes, and now, you've had a little bit of time off and you come back into professional baseball. And I'm curious to see, what you've seen in the evolution of the game.
Well, I mean, just on the strength training side alone, it's become way, way better. I mean, I have always felt baseball has been a little bit behind with other sports as far as that goes, as far as strength training, nutrition, all of those things. But, when I first came up, I was with the Pirates, and I moved to Pittsburgh so I could train at the stadium in the off season. And I grew up like 2 hours from there, so it wasn't like a big move or anything. And I was always a Pirate fan, but I remember being in the weight room, and I'm doing like bicep curls or something with like 40-pound weights, and the strength coach would come over and he'd be staring at me and like wouldn't really say anything. But then he's like, "Hey, that's too heavy. Don't you think that's too heavy?" And there was always this stigma in baseball where baseball players don't lift weights. They lift and they get strong, but you shouldn't get too big to be a baseball player or a pitcher. And obviously there's a lot more to that. You can get too big, I think, but if you're losing mobility and a bunch of depending on who you are, but we can get into that later. But then just seeing the way everything has progressed since then. I went where when I first came up, there was whatchamacallits and Kit Kats and everything in the clubhouse, hot dogs, chili dogs, and no one really cared what you ate or anything on the nutrition side. And then I was also playing at a time when organizations started getting rid of that stuff, or, you'd go on the road and they wouldn't have all of that stuff. And so some of the older guys would be like pissed about it. Like, "Oh my God, we're supposed to eat like rabbits and all this stuff." And, I can't even eat a burger in the clubhouse anymore. So it was that transition period where organizations actually started going, "Hey, like this is a big part of performing is the nutrition side." So it was kind of a crazy time to be playing. And I was fortunate enough to play for a long time that I got to play through all of that stuff. And it was a lot of stuff that I was already doing because when I first started playing, I said, "Hey, I want to play as long as I can." And when I first got drafted, I was like, "I want to play till I'm at least 40. And then as I started getting closer to 40, I was like, "Nah, I'll go ahead and I'll play until I'm 50. Nice. And so I was always looking for, like I said earlier, those different things that nobody else was doing that could give me like an advantage or an edge, whether that was a strength program, whether that was nutrition or some kind of different recovery method. I was always kind of searching those things out. Mm-hmm. And that's how that's why I wanted to try the ArmCare stuff when it came out, just to see what it was all about. And it's done very well for me.
For sure. Yeah. And obviously for the guys that don't know, Joe was one of the really early adopters of the ArmCare platform. So he's kind of seen the evolution of the system itself. He was kind of one of those guys who was testing it out. And you run it with your guys at the Beimel Elite. If you don't mind kind of touching base, kind of, those initial thoughts, how you use it with your guys, and just go over that platform for not just yourself. I obviously want to talk about how you use it, but how you use it with your facility, because I think it's a very unique situation that guys don't realize. If they go to your facility, they're going to get treated well. They're going to get treated not just as another number that comes in the door. You're taking care of the arm. You're talking to them about these things. So if you don't mind going over that, because I think it sets you guys apart from a lot of the other places that are out there.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, first of all, like when I started doing it, there were a lot of things I didn't know. I just assumed like your external rotation strength was always going to be, less than your internal. You know, everybody arm wrestles, so you always go like this. You never arm wrestle like this. So I just thought that was normal. You know, when I would like push against the wall, or we did all this stuff in spring training with, you know, a couple places would use dynamometers, a couple organizations, but then you would never see those numbers ever again, only in spring training. And then, you know, nothing happens. So, but I just assumed that's the way it was supposed to be. And then finding out that that's not the case. And, you know, your external rotation strength should at least be as strong as your internal. And I was like, oh, wow, that's really interesting. And then once I got that, I got my external strength up, you know, my velocity like started to tick up a little bit and my arm felt great every day. And I was like, oh, wow, I wish I would have known this a few years ago. But, you know, it's been a great tool for guys that we train, because you have guys that come in and they're either really weak or, you know, they're not many of them are strong. So we can just throw that one out. We usually don't have guys that come in and you do a test and like, oh, wow, that's really good. It's usually the opposite, because it's all stuff they haven't done. And, you know, a guy might have arm problems or a history of arm problems. We're able to really, I mean, I'd say probably 80% of the time, and it's not with everybody, but usually it's the same, where their internal is stronger than their external. And we do have some pro guys that'll come in and their external is way above like their internal and stuff like that. But it's just nice to have, where guys like, oh man, my shoulder's been bothering me for years. And you kind of give them the test and you're like, well, there you go. That's probably the issue. Is one, you're just really weak. And we have the guys that are high velo, low strength. And they're always sore or always hurt, or something's always bothering them. And, you know, the low strength, low velo guys, they don't really know because they don't throw very hard. So, you know, their arm really doesn't hurt. But it's been nice to be able to pinpoint, you know, hey, if you do this, and then see the progression and see the strength go up. And even a case that we just had this past week, and what I love about the coaches app is I'm not always in one place or the other. I'm kind of going back and forth between LA and Texas, most of the time in Texas. But we had a kid who he was actually in a car wreck a few months ago, and he hadn't been coming in to train. And I didn't know how long he hadn't been in, because I haven't been in LA in a little bit. But I was looking on the coaches app, and like, every single strength thing, he had a little green dot by that was medical. And I was like, what is going on? Like, this was a kid who was pretty strong, and now he's like super weak, but I didn't know he hadn't been in a while. So I messaged all the trainers here in LA and like, hey, we got to take a look at this athlete and, you know, find out what's going on. And then once I got here, found out, well, he hadn't trained in a long time, and he was in a car wreck and had like concussion issues and stuff like that. So I'm like, all right, well, that makes a little more sense. But just the fact that I can like look on there and see guys that, you know, I don't see every day, and still be able to program their throwing accordingly, their strength program accordingly. It's super convenient.
Mm-hmm. And that's what I mean by that advantage with your group. Using the system is not just a way to help a player improve, but as it's a channel of communication. Like, you're not even in the same state, and you're able to communicate about a player that you have a concern over. So it's still putting that player's needs as the priority, that's the designation of the system. Is it's not just for development. It's also communication to make sure everybody's on the same page. So that's why I'm excited about having you on here, because you're using it not just as a coach and kind of a director or from an administrative role, but you're using it for yourself as a player who arguably may have had one of the best seasons of his career when you go back and look at the numbers. So if you don't mind kind of switching over to how you use it for you now as a player.
Well, I'm the best, you know, like I said, when I first started using it, I was just kind of shocked. And, you know, I do a lot of things, right? So I do a lot of recovery stuff. I changed a lot of recovery things for myself. So I was moving better, just feeling better overall. But then this was kind of like the final piece of the puzzle, was getting getting that arm strength, getting the ratio correct, improving my scaption strength, all of that stuff. And, I remember I had not thrown for like months, and I had just finished like a 16-week like strength program that I was doing. And we were running like a fall live at bat league with like the hit tracks and pitchers and hitters and stuff like that. And there was like one day where I think we had like 3 or 4 pitchers. So I was like, oh, I'll just get on and like throw some balls, throw strikes, and let you guys like hit it. I'll let you know if fastball's coming. You guys can just, try and hit it, I guess. So I started throwing. I was like 84, 85, nice and easy. And then it was getting up to 86, 87, 88. And I was like, this is ridiculous. Like, I haven't thrown in like 3 or 4 months. Like, not even, I think I did plyo throws like maybe once or twice. And I would not suggest that to anyone to, but I was like retired, and I'm like, who cares? Yeah, we'll go ahead and do this. And I ended up getting up to 90 that day. And I was like, man, that's kind of crazy. Like, I'm throwing 90 right now. Like, I would top out at 90 in games when I was playing. So then the next week I was like, well, let's do it again. So then I started throwing during the week. And then probably maybe either that week or soon after that was when I started with the Armcare program. And I had talked to Dugan years ago about it. He told me about the idea and all this stuff. And then he contacted me and said, hey, like, would you try this out? I know we talked about this like 2 years ago, but I want to see what your thoughts are on it. So, I started doing it. And the next week I threw again, and I was, like up to low 90s again. And then gradually, as I started, like, arms started getting stronger, my external rotation strength started going up. Velocity just started like coming really quickly. I was up to like 93 the one week, and then the next week I remember I hit like 94.8 on the stalker. It was like 94.6 on the Rapsodo, and I'm like, what is going on right now? Like, this isn't supposed to happen for 44-year-olds. So I kept throwing, and was up into the 95s, and I kind of looked at my business partner. I'm like, geez, I have to play this year, don't I? Or at least give it a shot. He's like, yeah, like, I don't know what's going on either. Like, this is crazy. So just getting that original like bump in velo from just being one healthy, which I didn't have an issue with, but just not, I would throw off the mound, or I'd do pull downs or something like that, and then I wouldn't be able to throw for like a week. Mm-hmm. And now I'm like throwing live at bats at 100%, and I'm ready to go again on 3 or 4 days later. Throw a bullpen like 2 days later, and then let it eat again on the weekends. And my arm just didn't hurt. Didn't bother me at all. It felt good all the time. So I was like, this is freaking crazy. And then once I did sign, just having those numbers like during the season was such a good thing for me, where, like I said earlier, in spring training, we would test a bunch of stuff, and then you never see it again unless you get hurt or something. Then they'll be like, oh, let's measure your internal and external rotation, range of motion. And they're like, oh, well, you lost like 20 degrees of internal rotation. It's like, okay, what? Like, I'll just do some sleeper stretches or something like that.
That's like your check engine light coming on after your engine's on fire. It's like, it's a little late right now. So
yeah, exactly. So being able to test those during the season was phenomenal. And there were some outings where I'd pitch like where my strength would be down. I noticed during the season I did lose a little more internal rotation strength. My external stayed good, and I didn't have any problems, but it was like, okay, I'm losing some internal rotation strength from the season. So I need to like start doing that. And obviously, as you know, it's hard during the season to, especially as a reliever, to judge what you're going to do, because you don't you never want to go into a game where you're on the mound and you're like, oh my God, I'm so sore right now from working out. Those are like the bad days where you're just like, oh, I should not have done that extra set of Bulgarian split squats or something. So, you want to make sure you're smart with it, but I knew it was something I had to do. Like if I was going to keep going injury free. And, I literally the whole season, like I was never sore. I never had to ask for an extra day off. I made it a point to never go into the training room. I know that's like a super old school thing to say and do, but for me, like when I came up, if you were in the training room, you were soft, or you better be hurt if you're in the training room. You don't just go in to get like a little stretch or a massage or something like that. But I made sure because at 44 years old, I was fortunate enough that the Padres took a chance and signed me. But also, when you're that age, they're going to be looking for, oh, hey, he's in the training room every single day, or he's hurt. So I didn't want that to happen. So I just I made sure I did my arm care every day, did what was like on the app for me, and kept me healthy the whole season. So that was, like I said, when you have those numbers and you can see that after an outing or before an outing, it's just such an advantage.
I got a question for you actually, Joe, because now you're you've been around younger athletes, and I'm sure they've been watching what you're doing. I mean, do you see a lot of athletes in the game doing very generalized programs? I know in professional baseball, some organizations, they have their Armcare program that everybody does. But I think the greater community of baseball players out there, they're kind of working in this one size fits all, potentially causing imbalances. This is a thought that I had, as a scientist, why are we getting so many arm injuries in baseball? And I think that the programs, like you're talking about customizing all of these things based on your training, that I think we may be training our athletes into injuries. That's a big worry for me. So I'm curious what you saw, along your career in that way.
Yeah, I mean, at the big league level, it's a little different because you're not going to get, especially if you're a veteran guy, strength coach isn't really, if you have something that works for you, strength coach or trainers, they're not going to really say anything. They're going to kind of just leave you alone and do your thing. And I was always fine with that because I always had the stuff that I did, but a lot of guys depended on, the trainers or strength coaches to help them with their arm care, do their manuals or stretch them or whatever they did. I was never really into like the manual thing. I didn't like being stretched either. So, crank your arm into external rotation. And then, there was a time when that stuff was going on as well. So, but I noticed this year, a lot of guys do, they would do like rebounders after they pitch with like the trampoline and stuff like that. And I've done those before. And, I think for me, just because I had Tommy John at 35 years old and have a lot of innings in my elbow. So I think there's, a little shrapnel in there, but that consistent like jarring of like the rebounders wasn't good for me. I would lose like extension in my elbow. I think it would just cause like chronic inflammation when I do those. So I don't do those. And we do have some guys in our gym that'll do them. Kind of the younger guys that we just kind of run through like basically a one size fits all thing until we feel like they're ready to be responsible enough to do the arm care, because it isn't easy. I mean, let's be honest, it's pretty tough when you do your warm up, you do your recovery, and then you've got to, whatever, sometimes there's 4 or 5 things on there, blocks that you have to do, and then go into your workout after that. So guys get like, oh man, I got 4 freaking blocks today.
Yeah.
So they've got you got to make sure they're doing
this is something for the person who really wants to take that development serious, because there could be days it's an extra 30, 40 minutes of training. It's not just, hey, go run through these 2 or 3 pre-programmed exercises. It's specific to what you did throwing, and it's specific to what your imbalances are as well. So, and again, I'm going to say it again for the guys in LA and Texas. Do you guys do remote work as well? Remote training?
Yeah. Yes.
If you're looking for a place that's actually going to be dialing it in for you, you just heard Joe kind of allude to it. When they're ready to take that step and get serious, it's a pretty good place to get going on that. They're going to use not just the ArmCare system, but everything they can for their resources available to really make it custom for you. Sorry to interject there.
Oh, no, not at all. Not at all. But, one thing I did notice this past season is, because I was doing this program, it opened like a lot of guys' eyes. They're just like, oh, what are you doing? I roll out my range of motion chart before the sweet
thankfully you don't have to carry that around
now
anymore. So
yeah,
for anybody who has a range of motion chart, just use
bag.
it as kindling for the time being,
Yeah. I roll that out, find a door to hang it on, and everybody's just kind of like, what the hell is this guy doing? This freaking old dude in here. He's got like charts, and he's laying with his armpit in the corner, like just freaking grunting and pushing this thing into the wall. But I think as they saw, how my season progressed, I was able to stay healthy. A lot of guys were very curious, and then all the strength coaches that I had this year were also very curious, because they said the same thing. We don't test this ever during the season. We test in spring training, and then if a guy has an issue, we might retest it, but it's never testing. All right, see what's going on right now and in real time, or after a game, or on your bullpen day or whatever. So I think a lot of people in the Padres organization were very curious about it, and kind of intrigued, because they saw like an old dude being able to pitch and stay healthy the whole season.
I think, you're kind of hitting on the head. Studying the field of sports science is always an observation problem. This is why, another reason why injuries happen is that we're not observing the athletes enough. I know in the professional world, some teams add a third evaluation. So essentially they'll do one at the beginning of the season, they'll do a mid-year evaluation of strength, and then they'll do an end of the year evaluation of strength, which is almost kind of too late. And, kind of getting our minds around of how often can we do this, and it seems like for you as a pro athlete, how intrusive is it to do this often? A lot of players, they don't want to get irritated or compliant, but I feel like a lot of the testing that we do, at least what we did in professional baseball, it was a lot more cumbersome than the athlete owning the process, having their own equipment, doing it on their own. So, for you as an athlete, like, did you find that it was inconvenient for you at times, or?
No, not at all. Super convenient. The only inconvenient part was finding like a door that was the right size to be able to put the thing up. Sometimes I'd have to find a janitor's.
That chart's gone.
I'd have to find like a janitor's closet or something to hang it on. But and in the minor leagues, it's a lot different, because once in a while it was hard to find a place to hook the bands up. Like, you just don't realize there are no chain link fences in the minor leagues. So there were a couple times where I'd be, I'd do it before the game. I'd do my warm up, and I'd be outside of the clubhouse in front of like the gate where everybody's coming in. And I'm like sitting there doing my warm up, and people are just like, what the heck's going on? But there's, you can always find a place to do it. Was the funny thing. Like, if you're dedicated to it, there's always places to do it. And then I had like the little things that wrap around like a rack too.
Have you seen the minor league grinder Instagram thing?
No.
So you should check it out, minor league grinder. But I told the guy, like, you should send this into minor league grinder. I had a guy use the ArmCare thing who had his door belts wrapped around one of the stalls in the bathroom. And he sent me a video of him doing his arm care stuff, of him sitting in a bathroom. But yeah, anyone who hasn't seen Minor League Grinders on Instagram, that'll give you a small glimpse of what he's talking about. It's not always the same as what you imagine.
Yeah, you think you'd have like a weight room or something where you can get a bunch of stuff in, and just on the minor league side, that just doesn't exist, especially on the road. You know, at home we had like a pretty decent weight room, but you know, on the road it was just not good.
Yeah.
Not good for really anything, but it was so, I had such a fun year. But yeah, you know, it definitely was not inconvenient because you don't have to depend on anybody. And that's the kind of person I am. Like,
Yeah.
I always hated like depending on someone to catch me or play catch or do that. I just like to do stuff on my time. I hate going to the weight room and like waiting, you know, a commercial gym and waiting for like a rack or, you know, whatever you're doing. So throughout my career, I started just like buying my own stuff, and everything I needed, I put like in my garage, and I work out in the garage. And I ended up having so much stuff that when we started our gym, I just took all of my stuff to the gym to get us started with like weights and stuff like that, because I had basically everything that we needed. But I like the fact that you're responsible for testing yourself and doing all this stuff. And, you know, you don't have to say, get a trainer and be like, hey, like, let's hook up this big freaking machine to me so I can figure out, you know, what my strength is after I throw. And you just, you know, slap the thing on your wrist, you know, lay in the corner of a door and get it done. And it's quick, but it's like it's super efficient and it's super effective.
Yeah. And that's, you know, we want this to give the players power over their health and performance, to understand what it is they're doing. And you're obviously using it that way. And that's one of the things is, you know, you've played for a lot of different organizations. You've created good relationships with coaches, strength staff, trainers, whoever it may be. But when you get traded, or if you get released and sign with a new team, that coach isn't going to be helping you anymore. So there is a lot of that personal responsibility that the player needs to take. If you don't mind going into that a little bit as well, I know it's kind of off topic a little, but just that it's good to have that coach that's going to help you, but we can't be fully reliant on the coach in a team atmosphere. And that's why there is so many pro players that have that facility they train at, or have that, you know, quote unquote guru that they like to go to, because they do get traded. They do get moved around, or you move up a level and you're no longer with the rookie ball coach. So, you know, if you don't mind talking about navigating some of those relationships with your experience.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a huge part, is one, just taking responsibility for your career. I see a lot of guys, and it's usually guys that either don't do well or they flame out and they blame like, oh, I didn't get enough attention, or I didn't get this or that. I've just never understood that, because I've always been the guy that we talked about earlier, where I'm always looking for something, and I took it upon myself. And I can honestly say, like, I've had coaches over the years that have helped me with one particular thing, whether it's a pitch or it's something mechanically or something like that. I've definitely had those coaches that have helped me, but I've never like sat there and relied on a coach to, like, you know, better my career. That's my job. So, and we take that approach with our facilities as well. Like, I always tell guys, it's not a magic pill where you come train with us and you're going to automatically be a better pitcher, you're going to throw harder, you're going to be healthier. You have to take that, you know, you have to take that step yourself, and you've got to put in the work. We can give you a program and we can do all this stuff, and we can monitor it and change things up for you. But at the end of the day, you're going to improve and you're going to be better by looking at yourself in the mirror and saying, hey, this is what I need to do. And some of the things that have helped me as far as mechanically is me just literally standing in front of a radar gun with a baseball and just throwing into a net and experimenting with things, you know, maybe my front side, my glove side, my arm action, my lower half. Like, I'll just sit there for, you know, 15, 20 minutes and just continually throwing to a net, and it doesn't have to be 100%. It's, maybe 50, 60%. And then all of a sudden, you'll see the velo like jump up a little bit, maybe 2 or 3 miles an hour at the same intensity that you usually throw at. And I'd be like, oh, wow, maybe I'm onto something. And throw a couple more and then go back to what I was doing before. And then, keep going back and forth and seeing if there's a correlation there. And that was one of the things also I did when I was retired, because I wanted to help our guys figure things out, but also, it was fun for me. And when you're playing during a season, you don't really have that luxury in the off season to start like experimenting. If you're hurt or you're throwing really slow all of a sudden, then you might like try to tweak a few things. But, when you have that pressure to get ready for the season, you don't want to completely blow up your mechanics if you've been having success and then try all this different stuff, because, by the time spring training rolls around, you might be completely screwed. And like, you're not the same pitcher you were because you messed around and did too many things. And now you're terrible. So not having that to get ready for the season was also a thing that helped me to be able to come back and play this year, because I was able to do those things. I was able to experiment with different mechanical things. But, just being able to use this as well in that scenario, and being, like I said before, like just the testing, retesting, I'm always huge on that stuff. I'm always, I don't like guessing. I like having the numbers right there. So when you have that and you can see like, oh man, I feel pretty good today, I don't feel that good today, but you're able to like test and see like, oh, that's actually way better than I thought. Or man, that's terrible. My strength is way down today. Which I've noticed the more consistent you are, those things don't happen. You kind of just stay in there. And I've been in a good spot right now. I'm kind of happy with where my strength is on that side and all of that.
Yeah, you said something really awesome where you said testing and retesting. And it brought to mind, and I think this will probably be my last observation on the day. I don't know, Ryan, you probably have a couple more to go with, but everyone says baseball's a marathon. Oh, it's a marathon. But in reality, and again, I'm going to butcher this because I don't watch NASCAR, but it's a NASCAR race. It might be 500 laps, but you need to stop in. You need to get your tires rotated. You need to get the oil. You need to get refueled. You need to do all these things. And the only way you can do that is by testing and retesting pretty frequently. There's going to be, not every Wednesday is the same. Not every day after the off day as reliever is the same. And again, I never played to the same extent that you did, but I was a reliever in pro ball as well. I did a little bit of starting, and man, being a reliever is not an easy job description, because you pitch on Monday, you pitch on Tuesday, Wednesday is a travel day. You drive out to middle of nowhere, San Angelo, whatever it's called, and wherever, Rio Grande Valley, out in the middle of nowhere, Texas. Wake up, go play a doubleheader, then drive back somewhere else. Like, I'm not feeling good. But if you're able to test and retest, you can look at it and go, okay, I actually need to rotate the tires today. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to lessen my workload in my pregame throwing and adjust that way. I'm going to be fresh for the game. And, that's what the baseball season is it's high intensity, hard sprints over the course of, 200-ish days when you factor in spring training and everything that goes with it. So if you don't mind, I know you've alluded to it a little bit. If you don't mind going over how you use this on a general throw day to kind of dictate what you were going to do.
Yeah. A lot of it, starters just have it so easy. They get, they get to plan their whole week. They know when they're going to pitch. They know when they're going to throw a bullpen. So it's easier. And not to say starting is easy. I'm a failed starter, so I know it's not that easy.
Planning is easier. Planning is easier.
Exactly. It's easier to perform when you're able to, schedule everything out and play. Going through the lineup 3 or 4 times, that's hard. I've never been good at that. But, as a reliever, a lot of it, you do have to go by feel, because, your body will let you know if you should go out and throw a long toss or not. And there are those days where that's where for myself, it gets hard because you want to work out and you don't want to lose strength during the course of the season. But at the same time, your job is to perform on the field, not to perform in the weight room. So you've got to be able to back off once in a while. Like, I would always be a guy where if I threw like 3 days in a row or something like that, and I was supposed to do a workout on that fourth day, I'd just be like, I'm just going to take this whole day off, and then, we'll push it back a day or push it back 2 days, depending on that. But with using the dynamometer and using the app, I would still go by feel a lot of times with my throwing program, where some days I would do plyo throws before the game, but then some days I would skip the plyo throws and just throw the baseball to get loose. And a lot of times I would dictate that by what my arm strength was before the game, where if I tested it and my strength was up or within my normal range, I would, all right, I'll do some plyo throws a day to get loose. And if it wasn't, or if maybe after the game, after I pitched, my strength was down, then the next day I would back off a little bit. I would just go out. And not to say a baseball is like the perfect weight, by any means, which I think some people forget. Like, baseball is pretty light, and that causes a lot of stress on your arm. So sometimes throwing a heavier ball is good for a recovery day. And, when I back off the plyos, maybe I'd just throw like one of the heavier balls, or I wouldn't do all of them, just kind of lessen my throwing on the days that I was, a little weaker, or after a game where I was a little weaker. But it's nice to have that. It's nice to know, like, you can go by feel. And I think there's something to that. But when you do have a number that shows you like, oh, maybe I feel tired today, and you check your strength and it's good, maybe it's just your overall body's a little tired. You didn't get enough sleep or something. You have those 10-hour bus rides, but when you can just test and check it out and say like, oh, maybe what I'm feeling isn't the same as what I really am, then I think that's super helpful.
Mm-hmm.
I got another question on that. So Jordan and I were just at the ABCA conference. I don't know if you've ever been to this conference, but it's huge. It was my first time. And we got to this hot stove. It was like a smaller meeting with, and it was all based on strength and conditioning. And when we got to the question, I gave a question asking, should players see their data to the panel? And on the panel, they had some pretty big names, and a lot of them were in professional baseball. And the immediate response to me was players should never see their data. They said that that's disruptive. And, listening to you talk, it's the complete opposite, and it didn't make sense for me in professional baseball, where we were showing them their chase percentages, their exit velocities against them. We're giving them a lot of competitive data.
We're showing them the end result.
But
they already
then
know
when we
this
get
stuff.
but then when we get to, it talks about their body, the player's body, and we can't share that data, that's kind of a tough thing, and I talked to Joe. Joe, with your athletes, the ones that are using ArmCare, you've given such great evidence that you communicate with them. You tell them, hey, this is what I'm seeing in your data. This is, where we need to make improvements. You gave that perfect example of the young man who was in the car accident, and you're able to have that conversation with them. That it just kind of, my mind was a little bent from that interaction. And I think you are, in my opinion, setting the trend for professional baseball, for players to have our device and to be in control of their information, to be accountable. So, it's not really a question, but I really want to praise you for what you're bringing to the table. And I think more of the athletes, these young athletes that are thinking about this, hey, we want to give you the data. We want to give you the understanding of where you need to make adjustments. It is your career, and you need to know about it. It's your body, and we always had the expression, your body is your business, and if your body's bad, business isn't going to be very good. So you got to be up on it.
Yeah. And I I compare it similar to like wearing, if you wear like a Whoop band or one of these bands that get your dad on sleep and HRV and resting heart rate and all this stuff. I think with some guys, going back to what maybe somebody in professional baseball had said about not having or not wanting to give guys data. I think on the administrative side, there's like I don't know if they think like everybody's like super weak-minded that you're going to see a bad score and then that's going to affect their outing that day or whatever. And there are guys that's going to happen. I remember when I first started wearing like a Whoop band, and if I was in the red, I'd be like, oh my gosh, I can't work out today. Like not realizing it's just a base, like that's not going to, there have been times I've been in the green and I've been terrible. And there've been, I remember last year, I was in the red and I came in and threw, and it was the hardest I'd thrown like all off season. So realizing that just because you might have a bad number that day, or you might have a bad strength number on the dynamometer that day, that also doesn't determine that day is just completely shit. Like you still can get the job done. You still can have a high performance. Now it's when you start to string a bunch of those days together where it's like, okay, now we have a problem. If every single day you're in the red, or every single day you're not getting enough sleep, or your strength is down every single day and you're not doing anything to help that, then that's where it becomes an issue. But I think on that side, they just worry so much about the end result, the performance. A lot of these guys, their jobs are based on how athletes are performing. So if they think, oh, if we give them this data, they're not going to be very good, or it's going to get in their head, then they're probably going to be against that. But as long as you, the athlete, know, like, hey, I'm still going to be able to perform today. I'm still going to be able to go out and get 3 outs. My strength might be down, and it's just something you got to keep an eye on, but you can't let that like dictate the end result of that day on your performance side.
No further questions, Your Honor. That's awesome.
Yeah. I think that might be a good place to wrap it up. Unless you guys have any other follow-ups there or anything like that. Yeah.
I'm good.
I think that might be a good place to wrap it up. And shoot, I mean, we want to say thanks to Joe for taking time to be on the show. Obviously he's still prepping to play. He's running 2 facilities. It's not like he just has plenty of time raining from the skies to make room. So we really appreciate that. And hey, why not? If you're someone who's ever been 44 and wanted to make a comeback, hit the subscribe button. Like, why not?
That's
Get on here, listen to more of this stuff. Give us a like, leave a comment that he was talking about getting those 3 outs. Even if you're tired, you're going to run into a hitter like Croton and you're going to get at least 1 out. So we want to say thanks for listening, and thanks to Joe for being on.
Well, I thank you guys too. And I also thank you. I didn't have to go into work today until I'm going to go in now after this. So it gave me a couple hours to just hang out and enjoy the day. But I get a lot of like DMs on Instagram and stuff like that from like older guys, and like, oh, I'm going to go back and play adult league because of you. I'm 45, and I'm like, all right, let's go, man. So I'll definitely be telling them you got to hit the subscribe button, get the ArmCare. That's numero uno if you're an old guy.